Yusuf, welcome to UK Fight Site.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming down to the studio, mate. It's been a while since we've seen each other.
Yeah.
I think we've figured out now it's probably about coming up to 4 years.
Yeah, time has flown.
Yeah.
About 4 years.
So, just when I first met you, I came down to meet you at Bloodline Gym.
Mm-hmm.
And you was just preparing to take on Toby Binden
Yes.
at Combat Fight Series.
That's correct.
Yeah, and so Toby ended up pulling out of that fight.
You did?
But you did compete and you did win.
Yes,
Yeah.
correct. So, yeah, that was a while ago. I had a last-minute replacement. I can't remember who replaced him, but yeah, I do remember it was a first round stoppage. And I quite enjoyed that one actually because it was a combination I was working on throughout camp, and it landed quite clean. So, so it was good. Yeah. So in the end, round one stoppage, and I was happy with that. And then the world changed.
Just before we get into everything, obviously so much has changed for you now because you've made the transition to mixed martial arts.
Correct.
So I want to start there because that's basically what I've missed with this. So how did that all come about? How did you make the transition to MMA?
So during that period, actually I'm going to start again. Actually, I've always wanted to do MMA. So I've been training like Muay Thai and kickboxing for the last 18, 19 years now. So ever since I was a kid. And it's something I enjoy doing. I continue to do it because I like competition and whatever else. But probably at the age of 15, 16, I started to get into watching a bit of MMA. So that was probably around the 2008, 2009 time. And they've always interested me, but I was competing and training in sort of standing strikes, so, Muay Thai and K1. I thought, okay, let me just continue doing this. Always watching, MMA fights on the weekend rather than K1 fights in the stand. So it was always in my mind. And then before the pandemic, I think it was 2018 or something like that, or maybe 2017. So even probably the time when we was having an interview, I was having a discussion with my brother, and he was like, I said, do you want to do MMA? He said, yeah, well, why don't you actually just give it a go? Yeah. I was like, actually, you're probably right. I should probably give it a go. I think this was the age 24, 25. But because I was continuing to compete at a good level in K1, I thought, all right, let me just focus on this for now, because outside of camp, I'd do a bit of grappling here and there, sort of dabble. Yeah. But then as soon as camp started, I needed to dedicate my time to doing more kickboxing training. So I was doing a bit of that, and then the world stopped. So I was like, all right, this is kind of like a good break in a sense. It's a new chapter. Yeah. Once the gym started opening up again and stuff like that. So, and that was it. I was trying to get into doing a bit of grappling and MMA at the time. Now, I think 2021 was an issue still. Yeah. So trying to find the right people to train with and being able to train at all was a problem, given that grappling is obviously quite close and whatever else. Yeah. But then after that, it was, I was just trying to go from there. I started off in actually Titan MMA with Stuart Austin and a few of the others there. They helped me out, particularly sort of in the time there. They gave me a bit of grappling work, which was nice. But they're all big guys. Over in Titan, as you know. So they're all like light heavyweights. Yeah. I think there was only one other person who was like a similar size to me. So, it wasn't ideal training, but it was good training. So I started off there, and that's where it continued really. And then going into like 2022 and 2021, I was still trying to get fights, which initially was a bit of a problem, to be honest. Based on the fact that I had some experience in the past in terms of striking. Yeah. But eventually managed to get a couple of fights. And at the time, like I said, my first fight or two, I was, representing Titan as such,
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about the experience. Yeah. But just before we move on to that, because I remember when you saying you was kind of looking at the grappling first, and I think I did DM you at the time. I was trying to check for it now, because I remember we had a bit of back and forth, because I saw that you was on social media, and I think you and Phil Casper, was you was at a Kelvin Gastelum seminar, right?
Yeah, correct.
Manchester top team?
Manchester's a top team,
yeah. And I think I DM'd you, and I was like, making the switch, and I was like, I think you said something like, You never know. You never know. So, did I call it right? Was it
Yeah.
at that
Yeah,
right
around
time?
that time.
Yeah.
You did call it right, to be honest. And I think for the most part, you like to keep the cards close.
Yeah.
But again, it's one of those things that's always been on my mind to do.
Yeah.
And I was having a thinking and discussion with my brother, like I said, and people around me. I was like, I don't want to, be in my mid 40s, 50s, or whatever else, and be like, I probably could have done that,
Yeah.
and not really give it a go.
Yeah.
So that was it really. I was like, let me give this a go and see where we go with it.
Yeah. So with that though, I think was that you had another you had your world title fight against Joe Johnson.
Oh, that was the European title, I believe.
Was that European title? Yeah.
Kickboxing
Grand Prix.
Yeah, Kickboxing Grand Prix. Yeah, so that was in 2022.
Yeah. So that wasn't that long before you made your amateur debut, right?
That was actually straight after my amateur debut. So, and the story with that was, again, throughout 2021, like summer of 2021, things started to open up again.
Yeah.
But I was still struggling to get fights.
Yeah.
Particularly in MMA. So there was a couple of offers from, shows like the Grand Prix and Combat Fight Series and all the others you started up again. They were asking me to fight on them.
Yeah, of course.
But at that time, my mind was, all right, let me just focus on MMA, continue to improve my grappling. Ended up getting a fight offer in the end by Cage Warriors Academy.
Yeah.
They managed to get me a match. But this was in March. March the 12th, I believe, or March the 10th. Now, before that, when this came in and maybe in December time, but we agreed it. But at the same time, we had an agreement to fight Joe Johnson in April.
April, right.
And I was speaking to my coach at the time, and he said, well, at the moment, we've had 5, 6, 7 pullouts or organized fights for MMA and then it not happening. It's going to be coming up to 2 years since you fought. I think I was 26 the last time, and then after that it was 28 or so. So he said, let's just nail in the K1 fight. At least then you're going to get back into the ring and you're going to be fighting again. So we're not just constantly postponing and turning down offers. So we accepted that. And then, like I said, a few weeks after that, we then got the offer from Cage Warriors Academy. And that was a lock. It seemed like it was all going well. So I had the first amateur debut then. Went well. Against a really good opponent, Rafael Colonese. Cool guy as well, which is nice. It's always nice, facing someone who's decent. But yeah, so it was against him. Ended up having the fight. 3 weeks later, 3 Saturdays later, I then was scheduled again to fight for the title.
Yeah. What I wanted to ask, just to go back to the experience side of things. So was that proving to be a big problem because you've got your experience in kickboxing and Muay Thai? When you go into these mixed martial arts organizations to get matched up, what are they kind of saying to you when they're trying to? Is it because I've never really heard that side of the story before, how difficult it is for someone to come into the sport. Like I've heard of people competing that may have had a couple of kickboxing fights, and then maybe have had an amateur fight, and there's been a bit of an issue there because of that experience level. So was that the sort of things that you were struggling with?
Yeah, initially, and it's still now, to be fair. So I've been transparent in relation to my experience. I don't think I always take issue with someone who, particularly when I'm coaching or managing fighters or whatever else, is like someone's lying about their experience. Be upfront and be honest, and try to get as fair as matchup as possible. So again, I've been transparent, and it's quite easy to find a lot of my fights online anyway. So speaking to the promoters, they said, yeah, we can do our best to get you a fight. And then it's just trying to find someone who is, again, equally experienced, but potentially on the opposite end of the spectrum.
Right.
So for the most part, all my fights to date in MMA have been against like really experienced grapplers.
That's what I was going to get at.
So and initially it was like, especially for my first one, Jack Mason, the promoter, he said, well, essentially, like, you're experienced in the striking and Rafael's experienced in the grappling.
Right.
You both hard to match, just face each other.
Yeah.
You can throw it back to like a 90s
Yeah.
UFC fight, basically.
That was.
So yeah, it was like the old classic thing, and for the most part, that's just the way it's going to be for a while. I understand that I'm going to be going against experienced grapplers, who are going to be confident in their skill set.
Yeah.
You know, which is understandable. You know, same as my other opponent was part of the sort of judo Polish national team, and you know, a good judo grappler, etc. And it comes with the territory. I expect people to be experienced in that regard, and I just need to continue working on it.
Yeah.
You know, because it's one of the things. Yes, I'm experiencing one aspect, but then MMA is mixed martial arts. There's so many different avenues to get the victory. You know, and like granted, if I was facing a grappler in a K1 fight or a Thai fight, then yeah, that's a mismatch. You know.
Yeah.
But with MMA, anything can happen. And I guess that's one of the beauties of MMA. You know, anything can happen, especially in those small gloves as well.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
It's like you just need to get clipped with any sort of shot, and anything can happen, really. But I think training with the likes of GB Top Team in particular for my MMA, and continuing to sharpen my striking skills over at Bloodline Gym, it gives me a good balance of the two to continue to work on my grappling and sharpen my striking as well.